In Atlanta's underground gambling scene, JT Blackwood was a legend. A man who never folded under pressure, who played the game like he owned it, and for a while, he did. He had the money, the power, the respect, everything that made him untouchable. But in the streets, untouchable is just an illusion. When you play with fire long enough, the flames will catch up to you. And for JT, the game he mastered became the trap he couldn't escape. How does a man at the top of his world end up executed in cold blood? What happens when greed, envy, and the streets collide in the most brutal way imaginable? This is a story of betrayal, revenge, and a deadly gamble where the stakes were higher than JT ever realized. Before we get into this chilling story, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more tales of power, deception, and the unforgiving cost of the game. JT Blackwood wasn't just a gambler, he was the gambler. The kind of man who could walk into an underground casino, light up a cigar, and have the whole room watching. Not just because of the money he threw around, but because he never lost. High-stakes poker, dice, street bets, if there was money on the table, JT was the one walking away with it. Every single time. Some called it luck. Others called it skill. But to JT, it was just business. And business was good. He had it all: mansions, luxury cars, designer suits, a lifestyle that turned heads everywhere he went. He wasn't just rich. He was the kind of rich that made people whisper when he passed by. The kind of rich that made some admire him, and others plot against him. But for all the money, for all the power, JT was a family man first. His two sons, Zayden and Kyrie, were his pride and joy. At just 10 and 7, they had a life most kids could only dream of: private schools, the latest sneakers, and a father who made sure they never had to see the struggle he once knew. He kept them far from the streets, far from the dangers of his world. But in a game as ruthless as his, enemies don't care about boundaries. And JT had more enemies than he realized. One, in particular, was waiting for the perfect moment to strike: Tavares Caldwell. A name that carried weight in the underground, a man whose presence alone was enough to make people nervous. Tavares wasn't just dangerous, he was unpredictable. And after losing $250,000 to JT in a poker game, he was humiliated. A man like Tavares didn't take losses lightly. He didn't take them at all. The threat started soon after. Calls. Messages. Warnings from mutual associates. "Run me my money, or I'll run up on you." JT laughed it off. He'd heard it all before. He'd dealt with men like Tavares 100 times. In his world, threats were as common as bad bets. And just like bad bets, they usually led to nothing. But this time, JT was wrong. This wasn't just another sore loser. This wasn't just another bluff. This time, the threat was real. And it was coming straight for him. It started with a note. Just a crumpled piece of paper tucked under his windshield wiper. The kind of thing most people would dismiss as junk. But when JT unfolded it, the message was clear as day. "Run me my money or run for your life." He smirked. Tossed it to the side. A scare tactic. Nothing more. He'd been in this game too long to flinch over a few words scribbled on a note. But then came the cars, dark, unfamiliar, trailing him just a little too close on the highway, parked a little too long near his house. And then, the bullet casing. It was sitting right there on his doorstep one morning, gleaming in the sun like a warning bell. JT picked it up, rolled it between his fingers. That one gave him pause. Not because he was scared. No, JT Blackwood wasn't the type to scare easy. But because it meant one thing: whoever was coming for him wanted him to know they were serious. His crew saw the signs. They pulled him aside. "JT, this ain't just talk. Tavares don't make threats. He makes bodies drop." But JT just shook his head, chuckling like it was all a joke. Ain't nobody touching me. He meant it, too. He had money, power, a squad that would ride for him at a moment's notice. Who was really bold enough to come for him? Who was stupid enough to try? What he didn't know was that the hit was already in motion. The wheels were turning, and the countdown had begun. J.T. Blackwood had just placed the biggest bet of his life. And this time, he was playing with death. It was supposed to be a regular night. Nothing special. Nothing out of the ordinary. J.T. had just picked up his boys from their mama's house, like he did every other weekend. Zayden sat in the front seat, eyes glued to his phone, lost in whatever game had his attention. Kyrie, just 7 years old, was curled up in the back, his little body sinking into the leather seats, half asleep. The black Hellcat rolled down the quiet street, its engine humming, bass thumping through the speakers. J.T. felt good. Untouchable. The threats, the warnings, the bullet casing on his doorstep, it was all noise to him. He had dealt with bigger problems, bigger enemies. He had made his money, paid his dues. Who the hell was T-Rex to come for him? But death doesn't knock. It kicks the door down. It happened so fast. 1 second, the road was clear. The next, headlights flooded his windshield. A black SUV cut him off, screeching to a halt right in front of him. Before J.T. could react, the doors flew open. 4 masked men. All armed. No words. No hesitation. Just gunfire. The first shot shattered the windshield. Glass exploded into the car. Zayden gasped, dropping his phone, his head snapping up in shock. Kyrie stirred in the back, confused, groggy, unaware that the nightmare had already begun. JT's instincts kicked in. His right hand flew toward the glove compartment, where his Glock sat ready. But he was too slow. The Hellcat shook as bullets ripped through the metal, the windows, the seats. 1. 2. 5. 12. More. The sound was deafening, drowning out everything else, the music, the honking from terrified onlookers, the panicked screams in the distance. JT felt the burn of the bullets before his body even registered the pain. His chest. His arms. His stomach. His leg. 16 shots in total. His fingers brushed the grip of his gun, but his strength was already fading. His vision blurred, his body slumped. Blood spilled down his designer hoodie, dripping onto the seat, pooling beneath him. Zayden barely had time to react before a bullet tore through his neck. His small body jerked, then slumped forward, his lifeless frame collapsing onto the dashboard. Kyrie, still in the back seat, never even had a chance to scream. A single bullet struck his tiny chest, the force knocking the air from his lungs before his little body went still. And just like that, it was over. The masked gunman jumped back into the SUV, tires screeching as they disappeared into the night. The street fell silent again, as if nothing had happened. But the aftermath was undeniable. J.T. Blackwood, once a king in the gambling world, was slumped over the wheel, blood dripping from his mouth. His sons, the boys he swore to protect, were gone. The Blackwood family had been wiped out in seconds. And the city of Atlanta? It had just lost one of its most infamous figures in the most brutal way possible. Atlanta woke up to chaos. The city that never slept was jolted awake by the kind of news that sent chills down spines. Every station, every blog, every social media platform had the same headline: J.T. Blackwood and his 2 sons gunned down in cold blood. The crime scene was still fresh, the street stained with blood, the shattered glass from J.T.'s Hellcat glistening under the early morning sun. News vans crowded the block. Reporters pushed microphones in front of crying neighbors. But nothing was louder than Nia Holloway's screams. She had gotten the call at 2 a.m. A friend told her to turn on the news. She barely processed the words before she was out the door, barefoot, pajamas clinging to her shaking body. And when she got there, when she saw the bullet-riddled car, the yellow tape, the coroners wheeling away the bodies of her babies, she collapsed. No, 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 and no. My babies. My babies. She clawed at the pavement, her voice raw, her body convulsing in grief. Officers tried to hold her back, but she fought them, screamed at them, begged them to tell her it wasn't real. But it was. The whispers started before the sun even rose. This wasn't random. Somebody set him up. That was a hit. A murder this loud, this brutal, wasn't just another shooting. This was an execution. And in Atlanta's underworld, an execution always led back to one thing: revenge. The streets already knew. T-Rex. His name spread like wildfire. People whispered it in barbershops, in dice games, in the back rooms of smoke-filled lounges. The same man who had lost $250,000 to JT. The same man who had sent warnings that JT ignored. The same man who played for keeps. Word was, T-Rex hadn't even been in the SUV that night. He didn't need to be. He had soldiers for that. He had shooters willing to spill blood just to prove their loyalty. And now, JT Blackwood was gone. His sons were gone. And the streets? They were watching. Waiting. Because blood never dried in Atlanta. It only led to more blood. JT's boys weren't about to let his murder slide. The streets had their own way of handling things, but this one? This was too big. Too loud. Too personal. And when the first piece of evidence surfaced, the walls started closing in on T-Rex faster than he could have ever predicted. A grainy surveillance video from a nearby gas station showed a black SUV speeding away just moments after the ambush. Tinted windows, custom rims, the same ones T-Rex was known for flexing on Instagram. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it was enough to get the cops sniffing in his direction. Then came the real problem. A street informant, someone who had been around just enough to hear things but not deep enough to stay loyal, decided to talk. T-Rex been talking about putting JT in the dirt for weeks, he told investigators. He was mad about that bread. Said JT played him like a fool. That alone wasn't enough to bring T-Rex down. But when one of the shooters cracked, everything unraveled. Rodarius Rodo Simmons folded first. He wasn't built for a life sentence. The thought of spending the rest of his days behind bars, eating prison food, looking over his shoulder. It broke him. So he started talking. He named names. He laid out the entire plan. T-Rex set it up. He called the shots. Me and Drake pulled the triggers. KB drove. It was supposed to be clean. In and out. The feds moved in fast. One by one, the arrests came down. T-Rex was pulled out of a high-stakes dice game, still gripping a handful of cash, the look on his face saying he never thought they'd touch him. Cavanti KB Baxter was caught slipping at his girl's apartment, no shirt, no shoes, thinking he had more time. Drake Mallory had already seen the writing on the wall. He tried to run but only made it 2 states over before U.S. Marshals grabbed him at a cheap motel. And Rodo? Well, he had already secured his deal, sitting pretty in a holding cell while the others got dragged in. The trial was high profile. Every day, the courtroom was packed. JT's friends, his family, even his enemies came to see how it would all play out. T-Rex never flinched. Never showed remorse. Not when they played the surveillance footage. Not when they read Rodo's testimony aloud. Not even when Nia Holloway took the stand, her voice shaking as she described the moment she saw her sons in body bags. But when the jury returned with the verdicts, the finality of it all hit like a freight train. Guilty. T-Rex, life without parole. Rodo, 40 years. KB, 25 years. Drake, 20 years, after turning informant. Justice was served. But in the streets? The story wasn't over. T-Rex thought he had won. JT was dead. His kids were gone. He ran the streets, now he would run the prison. That was the plan, anyway. But T-Rex forgot one thing, JT's reach didn't stop at death. Inside USP Atlanta, JT still had allies. Some were old friends, others were just men who respected the way he moved. He had taken care of people, put money in their pockets, looked out for their families when they were inside. That kind of loyalty doesn't fade. And in prison, where grudges fester and revenge is slow-cooked, T-Rex was a dead man walking before he even stepped inside. He should have seen it coming. The stares. The hushed conversations that stopped when he walked by. The sudden silence when he entered the yard. But arrogance had always been his downfall. He figured his reputation would carry him. That his name still meant something. That was his second mistake. 1 week into his life sentence, he found himself alone in the farthest corner of the yard. No guards close by. No cameras with a clear angle. Just steel fences, dead grass, and a long stretch of silence. Then, footsteps. 3 men. Faces blank. Eyes cold. He recognized one of them, Slim, a lifer who had been one of JT's closest associates before his bid. T-Rex backed up a step. "You thought this was over?" Slim asked. T-Rex opened his mouth to respond. But the first shank hit his side before he got the chance. The second pierced his stomach. The third went straight through his ribs. The attack was ruthless. Precise. He tried to scream, but blood filled his throat. He struggled, but the men moved like professionals, cutting through him with the kind of quiet efficiency that meant they'd done this before. By the time the medics arrived, T-Rex was already gone, his body sprawled across the cold concrete, his mouth frozen in a silent scream. It should have ended there. But the streets never forget. And JT's people weren't finished. Drake thought he had escaped the worst of it. He had flipped on T-Rex, taken a deal, and walked away with 20 years instead of life. He figured that meant he was safe. He was wrong. They found him in his cell 6 months later, his body slumped against the wall, a plastic bag wrapped tight around his head. No struggle. No noise. Just gone. Rodo's fate was worse. Nobody likes a snitch in prison. And when word got out that he had been the first to break, it was only a matter of time. He was working in the kitchen when it happened. One moment, he was stirring a pot of boiling oil. The next, it was crashing over his head, searing his flesh, melting his skin. His screams echoed through the prison halls, but no one helped him. He lived, but barely. And KB? He thought laying low would save him. But when you cross the wrong people, there's no such thing as safety. He got caught slipping in the shower. They didn't kill him, but they made sure he would never walk right again. JT's name became legend. Some called him reckless, a gambler who took too many risks. Others called him a king, a man taken down by cowards. But no matter which side you stood on, one thing was certain. No one would ever forget the night JT Blackwood and his kids were slaughtered in that black Hellcat. The city moved on. New hustlers rose. New enemies were made. And the cycle continued. Because in the streets, there's only one rule. The game never stops. JT Blackwood's story is more than just a tale of power and downfall, it's a brutal reminder of how the streets work. Power, money, and ego will only get you so far before the past catches up, before the wrong bet costs you everything. But the question remains, could he have avoided his fate, or was he always destined to lose in the end? His downfall wasn't just a story of money lost or bets placed, it was a lesson in how power, ego, and enemies don't mix. He had the respect, he had the fear, but what he didn't have was immunity from the one rule that never changes: in the streets, there's always someone waiting to take your place. The warnings were there. The threats weren't empty. But JT brushed them off, believing he was too deep in the game, too connected, too smart to fall victim. He had been winning for so long that he forgot what it felt like to lose. And by the time he realized the deck was stacked against him, it was too late. T-Rex didn't just want his money back, he wanted to erase JT, make him a ghost, take from him the one thing he valued most, his legacy. But what he failed to understand was that some names don't disappear so easily. JT Blackwood may have been gunned down in that black Hellcat, but his story didn't end there. The streets made sure of that. T-Rex thought he had won the war, but he barely lived long enough to celebrate. In the world he came from, there are no victories, only delayed consequences. And for T-Rex, revenge didn't just come knocking. It came with blades in the prison yard, with silent retribution that made sure his name was carved into the same history he tried to rewrite. And the others? The shooters, the getaway driver, the men who thought they could walk away untouched. The streets made their decisions for them. One by one, they paid their debts in blood. Some fast, some slow, but none of them escaped. JT Blackwood's murder was supposed to be a warning. A message that even the biggest hustlers can fall. But instead, it became a story of how revenge moves like a shadow, creeping up when you least expect it. How some names don't just fade, they become legends. Could JT have walked away if he had taken the threat seriously, or was his downfall inevitable the moment he started winning too much? Was this really about money, or was jealousy the real reason T-Rex wanted him dead? And when the cycle of revenge finally caught up to T-Rex, was justice truly served, or was it just another chapter in a never-ending war? Does the game ever let anyone retire, or was JT always in too deep to escape? Should he have put his family's safety first, or was his confidence in his power justified? If you were in his position, would you have handled things differently, or would the streets have come for you just the same? And in the end, what lessons can be taken from this? Do the streets ever forget, or is revenge always just waiting for its turn? Let us know what you think in the comments. And if this story shocked you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime cases that dive deep into the dark intersections of power, betrayal, and deadly consequences. Because in this world, there's one thing you can always count on. The game never stops.